This week on Barbell Shrugged, we interview Nate Helming, running philosopher.
Barbell Shrugged is brought to you by you. To learn more about how you can support the show, go to barbellshrugged.com and sign up for the newsletter.
We do this.
That's true.
Crazy.
You remind ourselves the method every week.
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike Bledsoe. I'm here with Doug Larson, Christopher Moore, CTP behind the camera, hanging out at Princeton University. I can't believe they let us have this classroom. It is legit. We are hanging out with the Nate Helming of, I don't know.
What's
you're
up?
at San Francisco CrossFit.
San Francisco CrossFit.
Teaching people how to run, how to get strong, all that kind of stuff.
And he likes cocaine. We just talked about
Yes.
that.
And,
I probably shouldn't say it on the show, but that's what he just said.
You had
Before
those
we get
words.
to cocaine, let's
Earliest performance enhancing drugs right there.
I walked in, I had this and I was like, oh, I had to get a scone. I was getting a coffee and they had some beautiful scones out. And I tried to not eat that kind of stuff. But then you made a comment when you walked in. What'd you say?
So I was saying, just in the late '90s, we were talking about carb
But
backloading.
you said
and
you've
carb
never
diet.
seen a gluten. You never met a gluten.
Oh
you didn't
yeah, I
like.
never met a gluten I didn't like.
Said
A
delicious.
beautiful way to put it.
Yeah, all right, so go back. The story you were telling about.
The story we were telling. We were listening to some power lifters who really started to use different ways of loading up glycogen and depleting glycogen and eating later on, and how that could really change from a performance standpoint. And in the endurance world for forever, it's always been carbohydrates all the time because that's what we burn on.
Pasta. Bowls of pasta.
It's the best fuel.
And like the goos, they used to, tell you to take them every 20 minutes. And I always felt like at the time it was like a little sniff of cocaine or something. You're like, whoo, you have it, and then you crash right down, and you got to go up again. And
That's why you got to keep the entire 8-ball with you all night long.
That's right.
Fine coaching detail.
So
He's like, I've never actually done cocaine, so I don't even know what you're talking about.
Hypothetical.
What's an 8-ball?
What's
Mike's
an
like,
8-ball?
neither have I. This is hypothetical.
Well, so triathletes are basically carrying the nutritional 8-ball with them on their bikes. And I talked to this 100-mile, he's running 160 miles right now as we speak, and he ingested 25 to 30 goos in that time period.
Yeah.
That's the package of those things, yeah?
Yes.
The goo packs.
The goo packs.
30 of them?
30.
Jesus.
I
Yes.
don't even know how many grams of sugar in each one of those.
There's a lot.
It's probably like
high
20 or
amount.
30, depending on the size.
But there's a lot of a lot of them are packed with caffeine too.
Caffeine,
What
everything.
kind of sugars in those things?
I remember, man, I ran a marathon. We
Crazy.
ran a marathon and we had we were almost zero training leading up to this marathon. We're like,
That's
we're just
awesome.
going to do it. And we signed up on a bet, dare, whatever you want to call it.
We did go running 3 times.
We ran 3 times leading up to this
I got
over
the
a
hang
1 month
of it.
period.
I get it.
Actually, I went to Brian McKenzie's endurance seminar.
Fantastic.
He wasn't there, but someone else was running at the CrossFit endurance seminar. And I was there like 6 weeks before. I was like, yeah, I gotta prepare for this marathon. And they were like, they're just laughing. I was like, I know, trust me. I know that there's no real preparation I can do, but whatever. That's not why I wasn't there to prepare for that. But they kind of laughed and it was like, yeah, 6 weeks away. I haven't done any running. And the certification weekend, that weekend, my lower legs got sore. And I was like, if that weekend made me sore, I'm going to be messed up on that marathon. So we ran a couple times. And then it was funny because I was chugging sometimes you take those carbs in, it does make you feel better. But we definitely, I can't speak for everybody, but I know for myself, lack of carbohydrate was not my limiting factor. and I'd be willing to bet that most endurance athletes, especially non-elite level endurance athletes, the lack of race nutrition is not their limiting factor.
Shh, don't tell them that.
Sounds like is there a myth here to be busted? Am I sniffing on a myth here?
Quite possibly. Anyways, we were talking about you talking about carb backloading.
We were just talking about how this was something that I heard from the weightlifting world and never really used it in the endurance world. And I'm reading this article of this woman who wins this race called the Western States 100, which is like the Super Bowl of 100-mile runs. It's the original race in the Sierras. And the way this race started is the first 100-mile run race ever. And it actually used to be a horse race that like cowboys with horses would go through.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Oh, I got to speak a little closer. There we go.
Yeah, there you go. And you're actually off to the side of it a little bit too.
Oh, there we go. Right in the middle.
Yep.
I got to square myself up to this thing. There we go.
There you go.
So they would do this race with their horses, and this guy's horse like lost a horseshoe, broke down very early on. And the story is this cowboy ran the rest of the route that these horses were supposed to run. And that was the genesis of this whole race.
It's like a modern day marathon.
Yeah. So they win and they get these like big old belt buckles. That's the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most awesome award you could ever win for a 100-mile race. It's a giant cowboy belt buckle. You said how that race emerged. Down in your talk just a minute ago, you referenced also how the number 26.2 came about from marathons. And talk about how we need to challenge. Everybody thinks it's a sacred thing. Must have been scientifically dialed in. A sacred distance that was marked off by whoever the Greek gentleman was who dropped dead. How the story goes. You got to tell that story, man. I'd never heard it.
Yeah, it's cool. You know, it's sometimes we get focused on these distances and they've been around for so long. And I started to tell this story because right now CrossFit is this thing that exists and we're starting to see some rigidity in how we train and approach it. But at one point it didn't exist. And with the marathon, it didn't exist
before
either.
Before the competition.
Before it was formalized.
Before it was formalized, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read a little history on the marathon, it's really fascinating. In the late 19th century, they were bringing back the modern Olympics. And they wanted this marathon event. They thought it just signified so much about, you know, what the Olympics stood for and bringing countries together and this hard work and perseverance and sacrifice. And so we need this epic distance for people to do. And it was based after this famous story of this soldier who travels from this town of Marathon to Athens and gives news that they had won the battle, and he drops dead right there. And people are thinking, this is the most epic distance ever. You could have dropped dead, Michael.
I felt like I might have, yeah.
If they do this and they die. And so at first they wanted to retrace this route, but this is where it gets interesting. Historically, they actually don't know where the dude went. They're like, well, we think he went around this mountain, and around that mountain is approximately 23 miles, 22 miles. Or he could
have to run a marathon to die.
That's right. Or he could have gone over the mountains, and that would have only been about 17 or 18 miles. But we think he went around, so we'll kind of do that distance. In the first 10 years, the race was only 23, 24 miles, and it eventually kept getting a little bit longer. And it got to the point where
who's responsible for this?
Who's responsible for this?
I'm angry because the last 2 miles of that marathon were terrible.
It's getting longer and longer. So eventually got to the point where it's 26 miles. And it had been that way for a while, but they were doing the London Olympics, and they wanted the race to finish in front of the King and Queen, in front of Buckingham Palace. So that's where that 0.2 came from.
Isn't that cool, man?
Wow.
I always think that, it's 26.2 miles a guy must have run. What? No.
Dude, I thought that was completely based off of the whole marathon in Athens.
I just made that up, actually.
What the greatest fake story anyone had ever told about a thing.
Pretty elaborate story to make up, dude. Appreciate it.
Mason was great. But I think it illustrates a really cool point is that somebody goes, what are we doing? We could do this thing. They just make an assumption. They just make a guess. It seems right, and they tinker with it. They play with it. People forget where it started, and pretty soon it gets cemented into the only way it could possibly be done. A rule, a training, this mythos, these pillars that cannot be contested. Meanwhile, you witness things, like I've seen guys who are really fit in CrossFit turn around and do things that were also really powerful and forceful, and I would have assumed it wasn't possible. And now I'm seeing it from my face that this was a great myth I've seen crash in front of me. Like somebody assumed that you couldn't be both, and it got cemented into sports science books and research studies, and it became an assumption, and it limited the way everybody could train from that point on. You know.
Do you guys know the story of the 4-minute mile? Sir Roger Bannister.
Mm-hmm. Tell it again, man.
We do, but a lot of people probably don't. Go ahead.
Well, early on, before they were approaching this 4-minute mark, people kept hitting this wall, and they couldn't go beyond it. And it got to the point that scientists came out and they're like, well, we've measured the length of people's femurs and their stride rate, and it's mechanically impossible for a human being to run that far that fast. And I've got the scientific data right here. And eventually Roger Bannister pushed through, and literally like a year or two later, 13 people went underneath 4 minutes. Mm-hmm. So it's always interesting to see that we think it can't be done, and then someone does it, and then all of a sudden that raises our standards.
I rarely hear that talked about in the fitness world. It's always talked about at business conferences. Like, see, once you think it's possible, then it's okay. Then like everyone will move forward. Like it'll bring psychologically everyone into the realm of possibility. So you can create a new business or a new technology or whatever. But I never hear it talked about in fitness for some reason.
Have you seen the greatest video? One of the best that CrossFit put out was the violent agreement video. Did you see that one? It was Louis Simmons and Dr. Romanov and Greg was in between pitching questions between them. The premise is endurance and strength have nothing really to do with each other, right? That's the premise. But when they start talking, they realize that what makes you good at one thing, that essence ties in everything else. And in running, Romanov and Louis both said, he told the 4 minute mile story. He's like, now with no special physiology or genetic makeup, you can achieve that because we know that it is possible. You won't die. And the idea, he goes, what explains that? Programming, new data, mindset explains that. And once you know you can do it, then you will do it. And of course, Louis told the famous John Livingston Seagull perfect speed story he told on our show. He's like, like I used to be so strong. I saw a guy out pull me. He's like, fuck that shit. And I said, I read a book about a seagull, and it turns out that now I recognize that if you want to be really strong and explosive, you got to get around those people and just know that it's possible. Yeah. Same thing goes for running.
Perfect speed.
So we're really good about just jumping into stories with people that we already know and not really introducing the audience to them at all. So for everyone that has no idea who you are, who are you? What's your background? Where do you live? Like, who are your friends? Like, just tell us who you are.
For sure. I work at San Francisco CrossFit. I've been there for 4 or 5 years. I am an endurance coach, so I work with a lot of runners and triathletes, and it's why I'm here at the National Endurance Sports Summit here in Princeton University.
So same gym as K-Star and Carl Pally and Diane Fu.
That's right.
You're the running coach at that gym.
I am, yeah. I'm one of the running guys there, and I guess really the running guy at this point. And I've gotten to work with Carl and Diane closely. Carl and I breakdance together. That's how we really became friends.
Fun facts,
dude. I'm gonna come up to San Francisco one day and get a session with you guys.
It's
I'm going to be extremely terrible, but I'd like to give it a shot.
Every journey begins with one step, Michael.
Yeah. And I got into Sam's CrossFit. If you had asked me earlier when I was healthy as a triathlete, I would have basically been like, no fucking way am I ever going to go to this place because these guys are big, they've got huge tattoos, and they lift really weird shit, and they put 2 people on a bar for a heavy deadlift, and they walk around with these slosh pipes, and I'm like, I have no business with this. I'm this like, my legs are shaved, I'm super clean, I'm this like skinny, fast dude. It's like, why do I want to hang out with these big, burly guys in this dirty, filthy parking lot? And now 5 years later.
And now you have hair on your legs and tattoos? Is that what's going on?
No tattoos yet, but I do have a beard. Didn't have the beard before.
Say yet like you're planning on getting one. We can figure it out, I think.
We can figure it out tonight.
Can figure that out.
We'll
get some drinks. You'll wake up tomorrow with the tattoo.
You guys got a great scene in San Francisco now because you have also Mark and Jesse Burdick, Mark Smiley Bill, and Jesse Burdick can come over and share. What is some of the most novel application of some of the newer powerlifting methodologies that are being transplanted? Like Jesse and Mark are very good about taking what does work and can be applied across and applying that too. I guess you've had a lot of success also listening to those guys. I mean, you guys have it's a great little petri dish of experimentation there when it comes to this.
Yeah, it really is, and it really opened up my eyes because for the longest time, I was this athlete that lived in this endurance lane, and I was just giving this talk earlier, just before coming up here, saying it's like I read all the endurance coaches' books, and I read the magazines, and I wore the clothes, and I just did what everyone told me to do.
Which are the right clothes to make me fast?
A lot of spandex.
Okay, got it.
I got some. Tattoo, spandex, we'll make it happen.
A great exchange.
Got to shave your beard, though.
Great exchange.
Aerodynamics.
No. We can whittle the beard, but
the audience
we can't
does not
shave it.
like it when Michael shaves his beard. He looks like a 12-year-old.
Many tears are shed.
Many tears.
So it's been really great for me to work with these guys and really athletically, open my eyes a little bit. And I've just realized that for so long as endurance athletes, our physical standards for ourselves have been held so low that we're barely basically asked to just walk, let alone squat or do anything. And there's so much fear that's involved. And I really think that's why CrossFit, and in all honesty, CrossFit endurance hasn't really been very well received in the endurance world, or hasn't caught on much than small pockets, is because of that message and that fear.
The standards in the endurance community for
the endurance
overall
community.
strength and athleticism is low, but they're just focusing on endurance. Is that what you just said?
Pretty much. And I'm working with an Olympic level cyclist, and I bring her in, and she can't do 3 push-ups.
Why do you think that fear exists?
They don't want to get hurt, right? They're scared of getting hurt or bulky or slow down, right?
Yeah, it's very reasonable to not want to get hurt, right? And so a lot of it is just a generational thing. They're listening to their coaches, and they've paid a lot of money to listen to the best endurance coaches, and these guys aren't talking about it, right? And the reason why they're not talking about it is because they never learned it themselves. They never got a chance to be in that petri dish. They only hung out with, their own kind.
What about, I hear it all the time. People go, well, the best guys don't do that, so why should I,
Exactly. That's another big thing. We can start to see that, the best athletes will do things in a certain way. The best athlete who just won the Ironman in '86 hopped on his left foot 50 times and drank banana milkshakes, and everyone's like, holy shit, banana milkshakes are amazing, and this is going to be the transformative process. A lot of potassium, good for muscle cramping. But we start to see these things, and just like the marathon story, Ironman and triathlon is really not that far ahead of CrossFit. It's only ahead of 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's only been in the Olympics since 2000. So they don't have that many rotations in there. And before, it didn't exist, and everyone had all this freedom to train how they wanted to and try really dumb stuff.
How's the Ironman different than other triathlons?
So the Ironman is, in a lot of people's minds, the pinnacle of triathlon. It's where it really started and gained traction, and that is the ultra distance of swimming 2.4 miles, biking 112 miles, and then running a full marathon. And, I was one of the faster individuals out there when I was younger, and it still took me like 9.5 hours to do it. So imagine that you woke up and it's 7 a.m. and you're racing. And right now it's 3 o'clock.
You've already beat Chris. He didn't even wake up at 7 a.m.
Yeah, aren't the world records only somewhere in the 8s though? Like 9.5 hours is a really good time. Is that correct?
9.5 is not bad, right? And then as you get to the pro level, these guys are racing 8.5, 8 hours, and they're starting to go further down. And just like the 4-minute mile, people are starting to ask the question, can we break the 2-hour mark in the marathon? Because right now the world record is like 2:03:40 or 50 or something like that.
My God.
Crazy.
I can't even imagine.
This makes me nauseous.
What minute miles is that?
2:03 is like a 4:44, something like that.
So you're holding sub 5.
Yep.
For a
The
couple
whole
hours.
time.
So you're running like 58-second quarters for a marathon.
I don't even know if I can do
That's
that
crazy.
for a single quarter.
It's
right
hard.
now.
Oh wait, no,
Literally.
that's not right. That's that's for a 4-minute mile.
Yeah,
that would be like 1:10, 1:12 pace, which is still very fast.
4:44 would be a 1:11.
Yeah.
There we go.
The math
But
guy.
go to the track one time and just run around one time and run it in a minute and 11 seconds.
See what
and
that feels like.
You
Then
will
think
feel
about
like
doing
death.
that 100 times in a row.
Yeah, it's
Right?
funny. I used to listen to this triathlon coach, and he'd joke and he'd say, anyone can run the speed of an Olympic level athlete. You just maybe only be able to do it for like 10 meters.
Right.
I still can't get there. I can't match it. No, it won't happen. But the mindset thing is really intense. Like for what? Like I assume like it's the Kenyans and these gangster. Their whole life and their whole essence of being, the whole culture is all rooted in crushing this event. Like what else have you found in your investigation then, besides just what they do, has made this difference? What makes this possible?
Well, so this is what's interesting about when you bring the Kenyans and the Ethiopians up. And this is like a big comparison with the Americans. And I was listening into you guys earlier today with Carl Paoli talking about equipment. And if I don't have the right equipment, I get a little fussy. Yeah. And I'm the same. I was working at a hotel gym. It had like a shitty pull-up bar. I'm like, fuck it, I'm not doing pull-ups. This is not like my home gym. And dumbbells are like lumpy. And I'm like, this sucks.
I hate lumpy dumbbells.
But
I don't know
runners.
what that means.
I don't either.
Lumpy. I don't know either. But runners in these countries are doing it because this is their get out of poverty ticket. That's why they ran so much. And Haile Gebrselassie, which is one of the most famous endurance runners now, he's been world champion in everything, I believe, from 10,000 meters all the way up to the full marathon. And blown everyone away, setting new world records all the time, even at an older age. He's like, hey, I had to run everywhere. This is what I did. It's like my kids now, they get driven to school in a Mercedes. They've got the genetics, but chances are they don't have that grit and that drive to train the way I did, because this was my ticket out.
It's too nice.
Well, the entire culture too, the whole entire culture and the essence of what they hold dear for the last. When did the Kenyans really start pushing their running?
That's a really good question, because it really seems like the last 5 to 10 years, everyone's talking about them and they're a lot more dominant. But, I feel like chances are they've been out there for,
because there's also everything. There's
15
genetics,
to 20 or more.
And then there's the economics of it. Then there's once one guy can master that sport and he gets out and he shows that we have something here, folks. We can train in a way that we're really driving ourselves. We can achieve this. Once that first Kenyan guy shows that we could be something special, then everybody else starts believing it. And then 1 or 2 generations down, when there's the genetics, there's also just the cultural, like the epigenetic factors that all are coming together, where you are now a Kenyan guy who gets born, and now there's just more than just how we train and what we need to do for us to have our shot at a new life. There's also the culture of it demands that we take pride. We bring up this battle axe. It's like a tribe in Scotland who can really slay with claymores for centuries and centuries. It's a trade.
It's a really good point. And I remember reading this book about the life of Lance Armstrong and how we got through different places. And early on, there was this guy who was his investor. He's out of California, and he invested in this first American cycling team. And his goal was like, I want to win the Tour de France. And he was working with this Polish coach who was this genius for cycling training. And he was just starting to train young Lance Armstrong and some other guys. And he really said it this way. And he's like, trying to win the Tour de France with the American team is like getting a French baseball team to win the World Series. It's not going to happen.
Wow.
But later on, he's pushed American cycling so far that now American cyclists believe that they can win. Yeah. And it's really started to do that. So I agree with you there.
All right, let's take a break real quick. When we come back, I'd like to find out exactly what you would prescribe for nutrition.
Oh, shit. Let's make it happen.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome back to Technique WOD. Today we're talking about strengthening your rotator cuff so you can prevent injuries and be way stronger overhead. So a common pattern that we see with especially new people when they get into lifting weights is that they do a whole lot of pressing and they don't do as much pulling. So I might do a lot of push-ups, a lot of bench press, maybe even some overhead work, standing barbell presses, dumbbell presses, kettlebell presses, and I don't match my pressing with equal amounts of pulling. I don't do as many ring rows, strict pull-ups, barbell rows in equal proportions to the amount of pressing that I do. I want to match 1-to-1 usually pressing and pulling, and that's not a very common thing to see amongst beginners until you get more experience and you start to learn more about the pulling exercises, which certainly aren't as popular. Bench press is talked about much more than barbell bent over rows. So because the popularity of bench press is way higher than barbell bent over rows, people will do way more bench presses and not as many barbell bent rows. And so what happens is you get some type of an imbalance. Your pressing muscles get strong, your pulling muscles, they're way behind, and it takes a long time to get those pulling muscles to catch up. So that's a very common thing. If you've been training in a CrossFit gym or you have some amount of strength and conditioning experience, you probably already know to get that roughly, that 1-to-1 ratio between pressing and pulling. If you did pressing for a long time and now you're just learning about pulling and you're just trying to catch up your pulling volume to your old pressing volume, then maybe you do twice as much pulling right now as you do pressing. You have a 2-to-1 ratio of pulling to pressing, just so you can catch up and get some amount of balance back in your body. So that's a very common thing. Another really common thing is that with pressing and pulling, since your pec is a shoulder internal rotator and your lats, your big back muscles, are also internal rotators, often doing a lot of pressing and pulling with the 2 examples I just used, with bench press and with barbell bent rows, those are both internal rotation based activities, since I'm using primarily at the shoulder here my pecs and my lats. So because I do a lot of internal rotation, I rarely match, or you probably don't have to do 1-to-1, but you should do some amount of supplementary external rotation work. That way your rotator cuff can stay nice and strong. So if you don't know what a rotator cuff is, I'm going to have Mike come out here for a second. This is Mike Knowlton, he's one of our coaches here at Faction. If he faces this way, basically what your rotator cuff is a series of 4 different muscles that float on your scapula and go out to your shoulder, or rather to your upper arm, your humerus. So if my shoulder blades are here, just so you can get a picture of this, if Mike raises his arms up overhead, my shoulder blades kind of float up like that, and then when he goes back down to normal, they float back down together. If he rolls his shoulders forward, they'll float out to the side. If he brings them together, they'll come out like that, okay? So if I use this hand on his right scapula here, your rotator cuff, again, is 4 different muscles. There's 2 muscles, one here and one right below it. This is your infraspinatus, and this is your teres minor. And they basically wrap over the shoulder like this. So when these muscles contract, they're going to contract this way, and as they contract this way, they're going to pull him into external rotation. As they relax, he's going to kind of go back down the other way, okay? So those are your rotator cuffs, external rotator muscles. Those ones are often left a little bit weak for a lot of people that don't train to actually make them stronger. They kind of neglect them, and then they get weaker over time in comparison to all the other muscles that are internal rotation based, okay? So those are going to be the muscles we focus on today, those muscles that are kind of right here that wrap around the shoulder, okay? Just to round out this big picture of your rotator cuff, there's another muscle that runs right here that kind of goes right over the top. And so when it contracts and it shortens here, if he just relaxes, when this shortens, it kind of raises his arm up just like this. And then finally the last one, if my rotator cuff, or my scapula rather, is here, it's on the underside. And then what it does is it sneaks from the underside here and it wraps under like this. And so when it contracts, it pulls down like that and it internally rotates Mike's arm in this case. So if I have a shoulder blade right here, I have muscles on top and muscles on bottom, and really what they're doing, if we come around this side, really what they're doing is some are sneaking around underneath like this, and some are sneaking over the top like that, and then you can see those muscles are hugging the top of his humerus, and it's basically, I'm gonna hug you, it's basically pulling the top of his arm into his shoulder like this. That way his upper arm, or his whole arm rather, doesn't fall off of his shoulder blade. Because if it has this very small socket where the head of his humerus is sitting right there, and it rotates around in that socket like that, it can easily just kind of slip off, right? Because it's not wrapped around. There's no bone wrapped over this bone like in your hip. Like your hip's like this, where like there's bone over your leg bone. But your shoulder's not like that at all. It's like a golf ball on a golf tee. Okay, it's not really in there. It's muscles and ligaments and your joint capsule and tendons that are holding it on there, and it easily can slip off if your rotator cuff isn't actively pulling and keeping it on your shoulder blade, okay? So that's kind of what your shoulder blade looks like. So again, for the rest of this technique WOD, we're gonna show you exercises to make these 2 muscles right on top that wrap over the top here that help pull you into external rotation. We're gonna make those muscles stronger, that way you have more bounce for your rotator cuff. All right, so here's a few exercises you can do, either doing your warm-up or probably at the end of your workouts. For the most part, you're not gonna go to failure. You're just trying to get those muscles to activate, so to speak, and to get a little bit stronger, but fatiguing them 100% all the way to failure generally is not that good of an idea, because it's gonna help you, or not help you, but rather cause you to lose some amount of stability in your shoulder. So maybe if you're about to take a couple days off, you can go to failure, but for the most part, especially if you're gonna work out another time that day, if you're doing doubles, or if you're going to some type of sports practice or whatnot, you don't wanna have a totally 100% fatigued rotator cuff, because it's gonna make your shoulder unstable, and it's gonna make you more likely to get injured. So if you're gonna go to failure, you need a big window of rest on the order of at least 24 hours, preferably more, maybe up to 48 hours if you're gonna go all the way to failure. So for the most part, the exercises look like this. They're all face pull based. So a face pull is anytime you pull something towards your face like that. So if you have cool crossover symmetry bands, which are getting more popular now, you can just get some tension. Generally we put them a little bit low, waist height or knee height, and then you're basically pulling right up towards your face, okay? Almost like you're going to this like bodybuilder double biceps position like this. So I'm not just pulling my elbows back like this because I'm internally rotated right now. This is externally rotated. This is internally rotated. So I'm not just pulling here, although there is one type of face pull I want to make sure I pull my shoulder blades together and then I externally rotate, which means my hands go back as far as I can get them. Okay? So I'm pulling here. Again, I'm not here. I'm up like this. My elbows aren't way behind me where I'm like this. My elbows, my hands are right around the same, in the same plane, so to speak. So an easy way to see where that's going to be, so you put your hands out just like this, and you bring your hands in where you're basically touching your fingers to your ears. That's where you're going to be. If you can't touch your ears, then you're not externally rotated all the way. Okay? So it's an easy way to think about that. And there's many different variations you can do with the crossover symmetry bands. I'm not going to go over all of them though. This is the general idea. If you don't have crossover symmetry bands, what I like to do is just take 2 bands, just tie one on totally normal, and then grab the other one and put it in there. Usually I kind of just shake it to get it even. And then what I do is I put my thumb in like this, put my thumbs in like that, and then I grab around like this, and then same thing. I step back, shoulders together, hands come all the way back to my ears, and then I'm pulling like this. Okay. If you don't have any bands at all and you want to use small plates, you can just grab a 2.5 or a 5-pound plate, and then basically you're just going to bend over, nice straight back, shoulders back, neutral spine, same thing. I'm just going to pull the plates up to my ears just like this. Okay. And again, there's a million different variations with each one of those things that you potentially could do. For this video, I'm going to keep it as simple as possible and just show you those 3. But a quick caveat before we end. So we're trying with these movements to work on pulling, scapular retraction, and then also with external rotation in that face pull position. So that kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone. It helps with your pulling strength and your scapular stability strength, and it also helps with your rotator cuff external rotation strength. So overall, it's going to help make your shoulders healthier. You're going to be less likely to get injured. You're going to be stronger overhead, or just stronger with your upper body in general, especially being on the rings in an unstable environment. Having a stronger rotator cuff makes you much more stable. So when you're on the rings, you're less shaky and you're very solid on the rings. Okay? That being said, your rotator cuff is not the only thing to consider if you have some type of shoulder injury or if you're trying to get your shoulder stronger. For the most part, if we go from kind of core to periphery, starting with our spine, we always want to have, instead of a rounded over upper back, we want to get more thoracic extension by doing extensions over a foam roller or over a barbell, some type of thoracic extension. And then from there, we want to work on having stable shoulder blades. That way, when I reach overhead, my shoulder blades upwardly rotate all the way. Usually the limiter with that is lower trap strength. Go Google that. Go Google lower trap activation exercises or lower trap strength or scapular stability strength. And you can see exercises on that. Maybe we'll do some technique wads on that in the future. And then on top of that, you want to make sure that you have adequate mobility at your actual shoulder joint. Do you have all the shoulder flexion you need overhead? Do you have full external rotation? Do you have full internal rotation? Can you reach up? Can you reach up and touch your opposite shoulder blade? Things like that. So there's all kinds of assessments for getting or having and testing to see if you have enough mobility in your shoulders and the whole rest of your body. Certainly we have maximum mobility, which is designed to do that exact thing. So if you want to test your mobility, you're welcome to look into maximum mobility. But the whole point of this conversation right now is that working your rotator cuff and making your rotator cuff stronger, it is important, but it's only a small piece of the big picture. So if you have a hurt shoulder, you definitely should incorporate some type of face pull or external rotation based strengthening exercise routine into your workouts, into your warm-ups, and maybe into your post workout or your end of the workout. The little stuff you do just to kind of keep good maintenance on little things. Where you're done with your squats, you're done with your Metcon, you do some external rotation work, you do, if you want to do some abs or something, you do some abs or something. It's like the little stuff you do at the end. It's a small piece of the big picture. So incorporate this stuff into your warm-ups, but if you already have a shoulder injury,
then be sure to get that checked out and find out if there's any other deeper underlying problems that are more important than just fixing your rotator cuff. So if you want more videos like this one, you can go to barbellshrug.com, click on Technique WOD. If you go to the episodes tab at the top of the page, there'll be Technique WOD in the drop-down menu. Click on that. All the episodes are in the library. If you want us to do a cool technique WOD on something that we haven't done one yet, click on Ask a Question, which is in the top right corner of the website. And there, one of those questions is what technique WODs would you like to see in the future? And if we like what you have to say, then maybe we can do a technique WOD on exactly what you want in the future. I'll see you another day.
Go. And we're back with Mr. Nate Helming. It's not doctor, is it?
No, not doctor.
Not yet.
We'll call you doctor.
One day.
There's no standards here.
This is what we're going to do. We're going to start a
Nobody's gonna look
university.
it up.
We're going to start a university. We'll give you your doctorate. Problem solved.
I'll take the barbell shrug degree.
All right. Yeah, I actually do want to dig in like nutrition and supplements because, we were talking about carb backloading for endurance athletes a little bit. It was traditionally done with strength athletes, or it was made popular with strength athletes. And you were kind of saying like people may be eating way too many goos and maybe some of these little packaged nutritional things for when you train or work out and when you race.
Yeah, there's getting to be some interesting things, and I kind of learned and researched into this a little bit a while ago. And one of the things for most of our sports is that when I'm in the CrossFit gym, I don't really need to eat in the middle of a session. And in fact, it's probably going to make things worse. And most team sports, they just maybe drink a little water or Gatorade, but they don't really have to eat because the time demands are so short. And when you start doing these races that are 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 12 hours, right? You need to start to eat some things. And this is where there's been a lot of experimentation over the years with, eating a lot of goos, a lot of carbohydrates. We need to keep those glycogen stores topped off, so we're always going to burn that way. But we've realized is that, our glycogen stores are finite. What is it, 1,600 to 2,000 calories for, an average male, and they're going way past that in these longer events. And we're realizing that they're actually burning a lot of fat as well. And the way I like to think about it, it's sort of like a hybrid car. You're doing things where you're cruising on the highway, you're electric, and then you have to accelerate and go up a hill. Then you start to get a little, into that glycogen store sort of system. And so how do I get this really good hybrid car going? If I'm just punching the accelerator and feeding it gas all the time, the electric engine is never going to kick in.
Right.
And this is where athletes start to deal with stomach cramping and vomiting and throwing up later on in the race. So they've gone on and then they figured out, well, we actually need to train our body more to burn fat a little bit better. So some coaches, this guy named Bob Sebahar, he works with the Olympic Training Center a lot. He started to periodize nutrition. And he said that we need to periodize our nutrition, the way we eat, concurrent with the way we train. And a lot of that has to do with how much fat, how much protein, how much carbohydrate on the plate. And I can start to train myself to be more metabolically efficient. So that way I'm not doing the carb thing all the time.
Would you suggest during higher intensity exercise consuming more carbohydrate, and then during lower intensity exercise, longer duration, you'd go with a higher fat?
Yes, pretty much. Okay. I feel like that's a thing. And sometimes I go for a long run right now. My goal is I'll go and get a drip coffee and a nice little donut after my trail run once a week. I don't really care on the nutrition side. I think the cream-filled donuts make me recover a little faster. I don't know.
So psychologically, anyway.
Logically.
It sounds like there's that same basic relationship between in periodization, intensity versus volume here. You flip-flop between these two things in the same way. It kind of pairs the same way as the work you're doing with the barbell. It
really does. And it starts to, I feel like it starts to take care of itself just based on what we crave. And, my philosophy is, if we listen to what our body wants to a certain degree, we can learn a lot. And a lot of times I used to know that if I was really craving a lot of sweets, chances are I actually hadn't had enough fat that day, for example. And I actually needed to up that and eat a little bit more. And when I started to cycle and mountain bike race, I actually started to eat a lot higher fat diet, and I didn't have to eat the goos as much anymore. And actually what I could do was I could do these hard tempo sessions for 2.5, 3 hours, and I'd maybe eat 100 to 200 calories, and I was fine. And then I would eat a good meal afterwards, but I wasn't forcing the stuff down my throat the way I
takes the
used
burden
to.
away, so you can actually train better.
What were you eating?
No, go ahead.
What were you eating during your 9-hour Ironman? Like, how did that go?
If there was an in and out on the course, I would kind of, take the bike through there and get a little cheeseburger or something like that. That was always the goal. But in all seriousness, I would eat things that were probably a little bit more protein and fat related especially early on in the bike. Oh man, I feel like I'm exhausting my little scientific resources here, but
go pseudoscience. I
like the bro science. That's where I'm really comfortable.
I think most of us are.
with the Ironman stuff, the longer we go, blood that is used to digest things is shunted away from the gut, and it does so for two reasons. One, just as we start to work harder, we need the oxygen delivery to our working muscles. But the other side is as our body temperature goes up, we need blood circulating under the skin peripherally to cool us down. So the further we go, that's pretty good.
Yeah, you nailed it.
I blacked out for a second. I just want to make sure.
I woke up and I made a point. Was it good?
I woke up and I made a point. Do I have that degree? So we go that far, and then later and on into the race, our stomach just becomes less tolerant and accepting. So I really feel like the swim, you can't eat anything, right? You're swimming.
No burgers during the swim.
No in and out on the swim, unfortunately.
Especially 30 minutes before.
I know. Although Hawaii does have a swim up espresso bar.
Sounds like you guys are limited by your mindset.
I'm living in the wrong place, man.
You guys have limited your mindset. You don't believe you can eat a hamburger while you swim. That's your problem.
That's the problem. No one's tried yet.
No one's tried. I'll try.
That's a limited view, man.
The 4-minute swimming miles around the corner.
No one's getting to the espresso bar and just stopping the race right there and just being like, you guys want to go surf?
Do you guys want to do this?
You guys don't have to go floating on my back.
It's funny. So early on in the bike, you have this opportunity to kind of make up some of the calories you lost in the swim and try to eat a little bit more solid food. And then later on, you kind of taper off. You let that empty because you can have a lot sloshing around and still ride pretty well. But as soon as you have to run, you just feel this. And every triathlete has
definitely experienced that. Yeah, the sloshing while running.
Every time you've ever ran,
not
in a race.
You might not be all that healthy. You need to go to the doctor. I have a sloshing sensation.
I've done 2 sprint tries.
That's awesome.
Yeah. They were both a lot of fun. I wouldn't recommend doing longer than that.
No.
I mean, if you want to get into it, sprint tries are the way to go because it's fun. I mean, you're gonna do it in about an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not an all day event. Have you done one? Or you did?
My famous bike crash story.
The bike crash one. Yeah, Doug.
I can't tell you what to Google, but there's a YouTube video of me fucking coming up a big hill.
It's an off-road course.
My front tire comes off and then it lands, and right when it lands, my front tire comes off, and I just fucking plow face first right into
forks in the dirt.
He could have been dead. That's all. Yeah. And he's got. I'll bed that in the show.
Did you roll? Your gymnastic skills come in? Did you roll right on?
No, it was just like
he didn't know he was falling until he's already hit the ground. He comes back. I'm at the finish line, I think, or I saw him later that day, and he goes, no, I saw him at the finish line. He's like, oh, I fucking wrecked. He's a little banged up. I'm like, oh, man, he ate it. And he described the wreck. And I was like, it's probably not as epic as he says it was. Whatever. The next day, email goes out, like, I don't know who this guy is, but I had my camera set up on the course.
Oh my God.
Sure
in front
enough, like it's the most ideal shot. Here comes Doug. Up, wheel keeps going, forks go in the ground. He flips over, and I'm like, oh my God, he ate it hard. Like I don't know how he didn't break a bone.
I borrowed someone's bike, and I didn't check it out at all.
No.
I just rode it real quick and was like, that feels good.
This
I
person
was just doing it for fun. I didn't train for
awesome.
it. I just borrowed a bike and went out there and did it.
This person was a saboteur.
Going back to the nutrition stuff, it's interesting because a lot of people like to have the discussion on the metabolism side of things. They're like carbs, protein, fat for these reasons, and now you're talking about hydration issues and being not just staying hydrated, but making sure the body can stay cool and things like that. So those are things that are commonly overlooked. People get so narrowly focused on just the metabolism of things. They're not thinking about like perspiration and all that.
Yeah, it's big, and I've gotten to work with Dr. Stacy Sims a little bit, and she owns this product, Osmo Nutrition. It's fantastic. She's worked with the Liquid Gas Cannondale Pro Cycling team. She's consulted with a lot of high teams in the Tour de France because these guys are riding so much every day that their stomachs get really fickle. Like, I go out and do my 1 or 2 hour mountain bike ride, and I could drink a beer and ride, I'm going to be fine. But if I'm starting to train at that level again and you're doing 4 or 5 hours, you get tired, your stomach can't tolerate. And so they really had to figure out what the best stuff helped them. And one of the cool things they actually figured out was that there's like certain carbohydrates that actually like you're basically absorb things hydrationally via osmosis, hence their title, Osmonutrition. And you have to have the sort of the right salinity for this to actually be pulled into your gut. And like Gatorade, one of the original products out there, is actually for a lot of us too salty. So what athletes have to do when they drink Gatorade is that they actually have to pull body water from their cells while they're racing into their gut to dilute it, to then pull it back in. And so
Inefficient.
And a lot of athletes, we get the runs. It gets kind of ugly out there. But it's crazy. But she tried to figure out and tinker and create this product that was like the ultimate mixture and combination for fluid absorption, which makes a huge difference on GI distress and everything. Yeah, it's cool.
Some things I don't consider when I think about, endurance nutrition is GI distress. And I guess if you haven't been out there time after time, I mean, that's something like you have to do probably a dozen or more times. And, you have to be conscious of the food you're eating before, even the night before, the morning of, and during, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and totally, and especially in the CrossFit world, when we hear a lot of knock of long, slow distance and don't go long and don't do this, and you can physiologically prepare for this thing with shorter stuff. Well, maybe that's true. You can physiologically prepare. But if I have a new athlete, they learn so much about being out on their bike for 6 hours. There's no substitute for it, and getting that friggin'
It's completely zen out there, man.
Totally. Saddle sores, finding new inner spaces in your mind that you never saw, they freak you out.
It's not just physiology.
No, it's not just physiology.
That's where people want
pacing.
They're so focused on physiology that they don't even think about maybe the psychology and many other aspects.
Right. When we ran that marathon, and we only ran 3 times ahead of time. We ran a 6 mile, like 3 or 4 weeks out, and then we ran a 12 mile, and then another 6 mile, and then took a week or two off, and then went and ran it. And
we did some sled sprints.
That's awesome. Actually,
I mean, we had done plenty of sprinting and running 400s and things like that our whole lives, basically.
Sure.
But anyway, the thing that I wasn't prepared for was once I passed mile 18. That's when my feet started fucking hurting real bad. I felt like every mile after that, I was starting to limp and my feet were breaking down. I had no muscular soreness when we were done. I never felt tired during the race. I wasn't trying to get a good time. I was trying to complete it. But what I wasn't prepared for was afterward, my feet and my ankles felt like they got beat with a hammer for weeks.
Well, it's sort of like
you did jump in a hot tub that night instead of icing them.
I also iced them, but I did jump in a hot tub that night.
There we go.
That's because there were hot chicks in a hot tub. Give them a fucking break.
That's funny. It's funny you said
it was a very full hot tub that night.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you say you weren't sore after that marathon, and it's sort of like if you take a brand new athlete and you try to max them out on a deadlift, chances are they're going to be limited mechanically in some way, and they're going to stop way before that actual max is, and they're not going to be that sore. But for you guys, and Mike, we were talking this morning, you're like, dude, I only deadlift like once a month because I'm like kind of scared of what I can do to myself. Yeah. Like I can go hard in the paint there. And it's like the marathon.
I think I said more like once every 6 months.
I like that, once every 6 months.
Deadlift heavy. Yeah.
But for most people who want to improve the deadlift, once a month's plenty.
Yeah, the more in shape you are, the harder you can go, and the more you can really just fucking destroy yourself if you want to.
Yes, and I have this conversation with my early athletes all the time. They're like, "Oh man, I thought that once I was like in more shape, like in better shape, that the races would be easier."
No.
And it's like, no,
they're only harder.
The better shape you are, the longer you can suffer at higher intensity.
This happens the way often too. People say, "What's the right program for me? When should I switch? When is the right time to move from this rep to this rep?" Well, the question is, are you getting strong enough now to where you are too strong for your own good, and that it gets harder and harder to recover from what you've done? Like, you got to space the workout more and more because now the potential for fatigue is getting higher, and it's getting higher. When you first start, if you're deadlifting a set of 10 with 135 pounds, and a year from now you will do 400, this is not very fatiguing. You can do this every day, and every time you touch the bar, you can add weight to it.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, you won't ever get strong. If you try to do like conjugate style periodization here, but it's not. So I assume running's the same way, where first it's like I can't run enough to really damage myself, but I'm going to get there pretty quick, and that's going to affect the way I train.
I'm afraid to tell new people that. They're like, "Oh, this is so hard. Does it get any better?" I'm thinking it actually gets worse, but I'm not going to tell them that, because I want them to stay a member of the gym.
That's right.
It's better in a way. You get better at tolerating it, and that's why you can go harder.
Right.
But still, you can make yourself way more tired. I was going to say for all the people that are listening that are normal people, either CrossFitters, or maybe they're even not CrossFitters, they just kind of do CrossFit because they want to run 5Ks better, something like that. Kind of the more beginner style crowd. If you just want to run a 5K and get a better time, like what are like the good resources out there where someone can get some workouts just to run a 5K that are very CrossFit friendly, or touch on more beginners and less
Yeah.
Ironmen.
For sure. So I actually have a few products out there myself, and I have a website, therunexperience.com, where I put a lot of videos out. I publish with some major running websites on basic strength and conditioning for these guys and some running drills. And I think the running drills and even the strength and conditioning stuff will be great for CrossFitters, because when I travel and talk to CrossFitters and new people about running, they're like, I don't like it. It's hard. It hurts. It's this big goopy mess. But when you bring them in the gym and you coach and cue them, you've given them a very specific task. And they're like, well, I understand squatting or deadlifting, even if it's very light, because I'm very mentally focused on each rep. And we basically want to take that 1 rep mindset to their running outside and start to think about their drills that way and their short running that way. And then they can sort of build up.
I love that. So they're not thinking mile run, I got to tackle this, or I got to tackle a marathon. Like you wouldn't go into the gym and say, I've got to tackle the 500-pound deadlift when I'm at 250. It's too intimidating if I have that mindset, right?
It really is. And I just listened to this guy last week. His name is Jeff Galloway. He invented the run, walk, run methodology in like the early 70s. And he just did it intuitively. Just this thing helped him train some people. And at first I was like, oh, this guy's dumb. Real athletes don't walk in a marathon. It doesn't count. I was all
Sounds like some
bro
internet
sciencey
critics on lifting.
Some
Doesn't count, bro. No rep.
Yeah, no rep, exactly. But then he was talking this week, and he's like, well, it used to be like 5 minutes running, 1 minute walking, and I distilled it down to if I could run 30 seconds, walk 15 seconds, I was actually able to run a Boston Marathon qualifying time. And then I'm like,
wow.
Holy shit, what does that sound like? Basically Tabata-style running.
Right.
And I'm like, we do EMOMs in the gym all the time. So it's like, why don't we take that approach to our running? And I think we can have a lot of success. So the run experience, I have some plans on Cody app for train your first 5K, train your first 10K, where I've got some videos, some basic instruction, and very CrossFit friendly workouts. They're like 15 to 30 minutes long each run.
How have people adapted this strategy? Good success so far with this EMOM style approach to running?
I asked him, and he just like intuitively played with it and figured it out. And he was this runner who was actually at the Olympic level. He'd made the Olympic team. He had the American record for the 10 mile, something like 47 minutes and change, pretty darn fast. And he started to train a lot of his friends and adults, and he realized that he couldn't treat these normal, regular people like these Olympic athletes. And that's when he introduced the run, walk, run.
Yeah, the things that tend to work really well for beginners, and even the things that worked well for us 15, 20 years ago in some cases, we tend to totally dismiss those things as in, well, I mean, that is what I did, but that's not what you should do. Even though it worked really well for me back when I was in that state where psychologically and physically I was a total beginner. And as a total beginner, that, and this is all theory at the moment, but that technique or that drill or that way of framing how to get better at weightlifting, how to get better at running worked well for me as a beginner. Experts tend to dismiss that stuff, and they tend to frame everything from their current level of expertise, which is what another peer expert might need to hear, but it doesn't connect well with the beginner. So the run, walk, run thing from a beginner's point of view might be like, oh, well, obviously that's perfect for me. That's so totally intuitive, but an expert's like, no, they don't need to do that because it wouldn't work for me as an expert.
Well, what's interesting about this one is it actually scaled up to some pretty expert runners in this case. And, Carl and I talk about what's the most universal way to approach problems. And, you have every athlete is on the same level of progression, or they're on the same progression just at different levels. So what works for someone who's brand new should also be working for someone at the Olympic level. And, he got a guy going from basically a 2:32 down to a 2:28 marathon with walking breaks, which to me is kind of insane.
I never crossed my mind that you would do that on purpose.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah.
I think this is the greatest strategy for running I've ever heard.
It's not running.
This is all about it. We can walk.
You've got my full support, Nate.
Tell me more.
What if we did run, walk, sit, walk, run?
Chill, coffee, cake, rest, come back tomorrow, run.
I don't know if the world's ready for that yet. I think that's very 21st century thinking.
I remember hopping in a porta potty. The marathon we ran was in December.
Yeah.
It was cold. And around mile 8, I had to drop one.
Yeah.
I had to drop one. There was no way around it.
Did you go pre? Did you do your pre-morning?
We probably did about
Pre-marathon
6
poop?
pre's.
I tried to line up the nutrition 48 hours out to make sure that didn't happen, and it still happened. And based off of what people told me to do and not to do. Anyways, at mile 8, it's cold. I do my thing. By the time I got off, I think I had to do it again at 15 too. It was just like,
oh man,
it's like, now I got to get moving again. It was terrible.
Terrible.
You don't want to sit.
Where did
you don't
you
want
had
to
too
sit.
many
Walking's good.
cheeseburgers?
Sitting, too many cheeseburgers was right.
Did you just go shit in the woods like a bear? What'd you do?
No, they had porta potties
Oh.
on the race. We're I think we're almost out of time. We got someone coming in to speak here.
Oh yeah, they need this classroom.
They
We gotta
need
go.
They need a classroom
to
yeah.
teach people who are paying tuition, I imagine.
No, it's slated for the Endurance Sports Summit, and make sure to go to elevateendurance.org just to see what we did do here, because this will post obviously after this all went down. And then what did you talk about today?
I got to talk about strong running and what it means to be a strong runner, and I really like this because I don't have that exercise physiology background. In fact, some of my favorite classes in college was philosophy, and
Just as valuable, I mean,
just
honestly.
I'm starting to realize it more and more. And some of our best.
Well, no, my point. Let me back up, because
Let me
everybody's like,
back
Chris
up.
is an asshole. You are learning to see this problem from a myriad of perspectives. It's obvious that you can garner sports science data. You know the science well enough to become a better coach, but also you have a varied background that allows you to cast a different perspective, take that data, and look at running in a whole new way. So that was not a waste of time to study philosophy, because it allows you to ask these questions now.
That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Like
Fuck everybody.
And so I realized for a long time, I felt like, oh man, I should have this exercise physiology degree and I should go back to school. But then I realized that, like, oh man, I actually learned to think pretty good in school, and I think good, and I could. Yeah, you like that? I could write okay too.
He's never heard that.
And then it's like, well, I'm not dumb.
That's how I was
It's like,
raised to talk.
it's like I'm not a dumb guy, and I started to ask these questions, and these questions were very simple. And I realized that I was going to all of my heroes in the endurance world, and they couldn't answer these simple questions.
Mhm.
And then I was like, okay, maybe I'm onto something. So what does it mean to be strong as a runner? That was kind of the
I
thing.
already shouted out something at your talk. I'm not going to shout again.
To be continued.
To be
Can you
continued.
pose some of those questions real quick? Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
you know-
I want to wait until the end. We're like, okay, so we gotta get out of here.
Yeah, for sure, of course. So, one of the things is, we use the term strength all the time, and sometimes like, well, physiological, capacity and, like the firing of a certain muscle or whatever. But there's also this collective term we use, like, oh yeah, you looked really strong today. And it's like, you looked strong on the field, and it's like, what does that mean?
Qualitative, right?
Qualitative, right? It's like, did they not give up? Did they not slow down? You kept going through those porta-johns and you kept killing that marathon. It's like, that was strong. And it's like, well, what kind of strength are we talking about? Maybe that's like a mental component. But then the other thing is like, well, you were a really strong runner. It's like, well, does that mean you're fast? So if you're a fast runner, are you strong? Can you be a fast runner not strong? And then you're like, well, where else do we use this strength? We use it in the gym. Okay, this guy can squat a lot of weight. He's really strong. Does that mean he's a fast runner? And it's like, well, not necessarily. So then can I then say as a runner, like, oh, well, if I squat more weight, that's going to make my mile time drop,
Not
linearly
so.
at the same time. It's like, well, it's sloppy. And in the endurance world, they haven't really answered satisfactorily to me what strength training should do. And it's because people aren't asking these questions. They're not focusing on the philosophy. They're just focused on the hard science. What are the scientific data? What does this say? What's the anatomical muscle that's firing in this thing? Your transverse abdominis is weak and your glute medius is weak. Your IT band is unstable because of this, so you need to do little exercises to tee this up. But there's this lack of big picture.
I think that, to me, when you say strong running, I think of like what. To me, it's like it's when you look at a runner, and you can also look at a weightlifter, who's this qualitative definition of strong. It should look beautiful and impossibly simple, and like you could do it. Like you should watch a runner, and if they're moving smoothly and uniformly and quote beautifully, that's probably the best indicator to you instantly that mechanically they are moving as they should, and that they're not wasting effort, zigzagging around or folding at certain key joints. Beauty transitions into stability and durability and persistence, the ability to do those things.
Yeah, and then they're not only efficient mechanically, but they're also efficient physiologically as well. And this is interesting with a lot of running debates and issues. Are we born to run? Are we not? Is the pose method the best way to run? sometimes they've done physiological tests on these guys running in different ways. And they said, oh, well, the pose isn't as good, or running barefoot isn't as good because, we got you hooked up to, the little oxygen mask, and we can see that you're burning at a higher level.
And you're on a treadmill more than likely.
Yeah, when you do these things. But then we have to go back to the next level. It's like, well, if I take anyone and teach them a new way to squat or a new way to swing a golf club, they're not going to be as efficient at it at first, but maybe mechanically it still is the better way.
You got to get better before you can or you got to get worse before you can get better. There's a little bit of a trough, a learning curve before you can get better.
Totally, right? And we kind of see that with running too. And it's just always kind of interesting to sort of look at this, and it becomes much more messy than just saying, oh, heel striking is good or heel striking is bad.
There are no just set rules.
There's no right or wrong.
Well, we're not getting kicked out of here yet,
Yeah.
so I actually want to talk about pose running real quick. So,
Sure.
So pose running is like the dominant, by far, form of running in the CrossFit world, but there's other forms of running out there, even though they're basically never talked about in the CrossFit world at all. So can you maybe talk about, I don't even know if you know all the answers to this stuff, what are the other forms of running that really should be in the conversation that aren't? And then what are the pros and cons of pose running? Is it just good for flat ground? Is it good for sprinting as a whole? What about running up hills? What about running stairs? There's all these other things that are never really talked about.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite subjects, actually, and I've read the pose running book, and actually the way I got into pose was through something called chi running, and it's a guy named Danny Dreyer, and he's from Marin County, and he actually studied with Romanoff for a long time, and then he basically took the tenets of pose and put like an Eastern philosophical spin on it. What is it? Soft as cotton, hard as steel? Something like that.
Sounds awesome.
Sounds awesome.
T-shirt.
You just tell me what it is, and I'll say, oh,
Yeah. Sounds good, man.
And so, the way that I see it is that in a lot of respects, running is running. It's hard to run in a certain trademarked way. But what they did, which I think was fantastic, was... Are we still
So
going
to be
here?
saying, oh, we are getting
keep
kicked
going.
out.
Are we
But
getting
you're
kicked
gonna
I guess we are getting
we
kicked
defend
out.
your right to
There we
make
go.
this point.
So I'll make
we
this
do
point
have to
real
go.
quick. We have to go.
Go ahead.
We can keep going.
Just wrap.
Fantastic.
No, we got to wrap it up.
So I'll make this real quick. So basically, Romanoff figured out a way to teach running to adults. And what he did was focused on certain tenets of running that I think has been a great way to make running accessible to a lot of people. But he just chose a few things in terms of a whole spectrum of that he could have focused on.
Mm-hmm.
And in the CrossFit world, we focused on things so much, falling, pulling. It has to look like this, that we're ignoring other aspects of our running that's right in front of our face. Like, what does sprinting look like? What is running up a hill? I don't just pull, I also push. Why do I focus on falling so much? If falling is just a cue to displace my center of mass over my base of support to create movement, I also do that when I squat. When I pull up, do I say I fall when I squat? When I walk, it's the same thing. The only way I can create movement is if I displace my center of mass in some way. So even if I'm like the middle of the night, I'm just using the bathroom and I'm rubbing my eyes and I'm exhausted, I'm just kind of stumbling through, I'm falling. So sometimes for me, for example, when pose coaches hammer falling down their athletes, it's like, well, they're moving forward. So by definition, they actually are falling. So for me, it's kind of like this cue that's like, we don't really need to use all that much. And I'm really appreciative for everything that Romanoff has done and what he's created. And I think it's really fantastic. I'm the next generation of coaches, and I really feel like it's my job to really interact with his material and challenge it. And that's the best way that I can respect it.
Yeah, it's the best way you can honor his work.
Honor his work, and then I can start to push forward and see, like, what are the problems that I'm seeing with this stuff, and how can I move that forward?
Yeah,
Cool.
you're not trying to challenge him just to prove him wrong in every case. You're just trying to help innovate and help move the whole field forward.
All right. So where we find you on Instagram?
Instagram, @Nate Helming, Instagram and Twitter.
Excellent. And website?
therunexperience.com. We got a kick-ass email newsletter. Sign up for that shit.
Nice. And don't forget to go to barbellshrug.com as well. Sign up for that newsletter. But make sure to go over to Nate's first and knock that out. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers,
Thank you.
Nate.
To learn more about how you can support the show, go to barbellshrug.com and sign up for the newsletter.